Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Ron Spomer Outdoors Podcast. We're actually outdoors. That's pretty different.
We are.
And we are pleased to have with us an engineer, a gun designer. This is somebody who knows his stuff, Nick Shafer. And Nick has been around the industry for quite some time. He was instrumental coming pretty much right out of school when he was younger, going to Browning and working with the engineers there and helping design the X-Bolt.
Yeah, the very beginning, yes.
Yeah, pretty successful rifle, very well built, well designed. Thanks for your contributions there. But now he's working with this unusually named company called Q that are making some really innovative rifles that I've been playing around with. They've sort of been pushing me into it, invited me over to show me the ropes and dragging me out of the dark ages and into the 21st century. But a big part of this, what they are doing, is this 8.6 Blackout, which first came to my attention about a year ago. And it's following on the heels, I think, of the 300 Blackout, kind of obviously. Mm-hmm. But the big thing for me on this is this crazy twist rate. They're making these rifles with a 1 and 3 twist, and I'm sure you fooled around with some others. So what I want to discuss with you, Nick, is what is it about twist rate? People are really interested in it these days because of the long bullets and the high BCs, and people are understanding they need to stabilize those with a faster twist. But when we say faster twist, we're saying instead of a 1 in 10, we maybe go to a 1 in 8 or 1 in a 7.5. You're going clear down to 1-3. That's 3 inches of travel, your bullet completely rotates. Mm-hmm. What's going on with all this high twist rate?
And we've shot, all the way down to 1 in 1 doing some testing. And what we're trying to do is see what we can get out of cartridges that are optimized for subsonic or lower velocities by adding rotational energy. And I think traditionally we can look at our twist rates are intended for stability. And we would generally like to see 180 to 300,000 RPM in a bullet, and before it becomes overstable or starts to come apart in the air. Mm-hmm. Overstable is kind of a hard thing to say. Yeah. You can't be too stable, right?
Right.
But we do see bullets blow up, and what's a good example? Like a 45 and 35 grain 5.56 bullets or 223 Remington, they like to just explode if you twist them too hard. But when we look at 8.6 Blackout, where we're running subsonics in the 300 to 400 grain range and supersonics 160 to 210, we can accomplish a lot with that twist without going too high, and we also get much better stability in heavy bullets at lower velocities, at subsonic velocities.
Now, you talked about rotational energy. Mm-hmm. I think most shooters understand that your bullet has energy in it because it has mass and motion. Mm-hmm. Those two things together contribute to the kinetic energy of your bullet, measured as what's your bullet's downrange kinetic energy, foot-pounds. Here in the States, it's foot-pounds. In Europe, it's joules, I believe. But at any rate, you're measuring how much energy is in that bullet. And a lot of us think we need a lot of energy to kill bigger animals, et cetera, et cetera. But that's forward progression energy, right? You've got the rotational motion that also contains some energy. And it sounds to me like that's what you're trying to translate into physical damage on the target?
Correct. Well, total energy, even in any other rifle bullet or projectile in the air, is partially translational kinetic energy. That's what we would normally figure. That's 1/2 mv squared. It's very heavily dependent on forward velocity. Okay. So, for decades now, the game's always been squeezing a little more velocity. That's how I get more energy onto the target. Mm-hmm. And then bullet technology, how do I deliver that energy? This is the same, but in total energy also includes rotational. And that is related also to the mass of the bullet, but along with it, its diameter and how fast it's spinning. Okay. So traditionally, in the easy one, so in 5.56 as a comparison, the reason we don't even talk about this much in high velocity bullets is it's like 2% or less than 2% of the total energy delivery is rotational. It's not enough to even bother mentioning. Okay. As the twists start getting, that would be in a 1 in 7. A traditional 1 in 7 type of load, like 55 grain bullet. As we start getting much faster in twist, and 1 in 3 is much faster than 1 in 7. In 8.6, we also have a larger diameter bullet, 338, and those two things start adding together to create a much larger percentage of total energy. In a 1 and 3 and 8.6, that's 17%.
So 17% of the kinetic energy in your bullet is rotational rather than forward progression.
Yep.
Okay.
And all of that energy is delivered in the case where a bullet stops in an animal, right? So we look at that as a significant contributor. Like that's how we can push a subsonic bullet, like to compare to like 45 ACP, you have like a 230 grain ball at 500 foot-pounds of energy. These 8.6 bullets in 350 grains will be closer to 1,000, 1,100, or 1,200 foot-pounds of energy, more than other high-velocity rifle rounds.
Okay. Wow. So how do you then get this rotational energy applied to the vital zone of your target? What does it do? I understand a bullet going forward is going to penetrate the lungs and the heart and tear tissue and cause hemorrhaging, and there's your game. But a bullet's just spinning on its own axis. How does it reach out and damage tissue?
In the subsonic bullets, we look at those that can expand, just like you would more looking at a pistol bullet, like an expanding pistol bullet, but we're spinning it now as the bullet expands, its diameter increases, and we start delivering that energy through the petals of the bullet and through the core of the bullet itself directly into tissue. As that bullet's slowing down, it is delivering that energy into flesh. Just as it's slowing down going forward, it's delivering energy into that as well.
So do you have to use a special bullet to be able to transfer that energy to the tissue?
I think that's probably true in all cases. Like we don't like to hunt animals with full metal jackets, right? Because we don't do a proper job of delivering energy to tissue. We just poke a hole through it. So the more we can make the bullet perform, there's several different ways to do that, but through expansion or crumpling or in some cases even fragmenting on purpose. We have some bullet designs now that are meant to break apart and deliver energy in different directions at smaller amounts. But I think it's true of all bullets. You need a properly designed bullet for what it's supposed to do.
So on something as slow as this 8.6 blackout, 300 grain bullet, 250 grain bullet, do you go that light to get to subsonics, or is that too light?
It's not. It's a little odd today. We'll see what happens in the future to be much lighter than about the 285 range.
285 to 350 or so.
350. We're working on some stuff considerably heavier, but we'll see. We can fit a lot of bullet in this cartridge. So. Okay.
So you've got that bullet, and you've got the rotational energy. In your experience, I know you've shot a lot of game in Africa and hunted a lot with these bullets. What bullet seems to be the most effective on terminating game?
Of those I've shot so far, they all seem to be devastatingly effective when they do as appropriate. We've shot slit style pedal expanding. They look kind of nasty, Lehigh type bullets. The Maker's MREX bullets that are made to expand rapidly by having multiple petals. They're solid copper bullets. They all seem to perform very similarly as long as they open in flesh properly. The grain weight seems to have much less of a difference of performance. And I think at this we can make a bit of a comparison to sort of like bow hunting. So if you look at a 350 grain bullet, that's not that far from a standard arrow weight. We're cutting a large diameter pedaled or like a broadhead style wound, but instead of that arrow turning once every couple of feet, it's turning through the animal once every 3 inches, and it's 3 times the velocity. So we get like a bullet type kill, meaning we're going to deliver a lot of energy into a large wound channel, but substantially more delivery than with a bow. So you just have to sort of change the way you think about what you're doing to the target.
And what is the velocity of the rotational velocity of that bullet downrange?
So even in the subs, if we consider the velocities fixed around 1,000 feet per second, we're still getting 200 to 250,000 RPM, very close to a very fast spinning supersonic bullet in some of the fastest configurations. That would be, like a 6.5 Creedmoor doing almost 3,000 feet per second in a 1 in 7.
Yeah. Okay.
So nothing out of line than what you're used to in supers. Technically in subs, or in the past in subsonic, say with like 300 blackout, even down In the 1 in 5s, like the barrels we make, it's substantially lower. You'd have 100,000 RPM or 120,000. So the 1 in 3s help us get both the bullet stability to a reasonable level and increase the rotational energy to a portion where it makes a big difference.
And you earlier said it was about 17% of the energy, and one of these would be in the rotational energy of this bullet.
Interestingly enough, if the velocity is fixed, it's exactly 17% no matter what the grain weight of the bullet. From a percentage standpoint, as the bullet weight drops, the translational kinetic energy drops, but the velocity is fixed, then the percentage is the same.
Pretty effective then, huh? What sort of a reaction do you get from the game you shoot?
They tend to, there's a couple of fun things that happen. One, it's really quiet. And I mean, we just went to the range, so you know, it's excitingly quiet. We get opportunity where in animals that are grouped together, the other animals don't react to the gunshot the same as they normally would. They kind of mill around. The hit animals tend to be like, "What was that?" It's more of like a good bow shot reaction. Oh, okay. You know, like a little jump and kick, and then they go a little distance, and they're just like, "I don't know what that was," and then they just fall over. Occasionally, because the bullets can hit so much bone and tissue because they're so large, we will get some first hit like drops, especially you know, like you normally would if you hit a little high or you catch some spine. You can get really dramatic first round drops. That's usually not what we're trying to do. I like to put them through the lungs and heart and let them pump all the blood out. But
yeah. Now, are you getting pass-throughs quite often on these, even with the low velocities because of the mass?
Yes, it seems like the energy delivery, especially if you don't hit big heavy bones, tends to generally pass through on game up to probably small elk size, and it's kind of hard to compare. I mean, you've been to Africa a lot. A lot of people don't like. There's a lot of variation in the size of animals, but yes, from a whitetail size animal, I would anticipate a pass through on a double lung shot with this bullet, all the way up to. Even like blue wildebeest, we had passed those gemsbuck, yeah, pretty large animals, and then on like a buffalo, they're going to start soaking them up.
Yeah. Now, exit hole diameter. A lot of guys like to have a pretty big gaping wound for good blood trailing and the rest of it. Do you see that quite often?
We see very often a wound that looks a lot like the bullet expanded. Whether it's a four petal bullet, that'll look like a square. If it's a 3-petal bullet, it'll look like a triangle, but a fairly large one. Once again, sort of like a broadhead bow wound on exit. The most interesting thing is we'll often see that same wound on entry. Those bullets expand so quickly, they will create an entry hole where you can clearly see the petals open. And we've got some good evidence. Our coworker Mitch shot a blue wildebeest that is just through and through both lungs and bleeding heavily out both sides, much like you would like. What you're not going to get is that hydrostatic shock, giant golf ball or a softball size exit wound. It's just not the way the energy is delivered because we're not supersonic.
Yeah. Okay, so why did you decide 1 in 3? Yes, but do you do that on all of your subsonics or just this 8.6?
We tend to run fast twists on most of our calibers, but I think a lot of that happens to be that we like to make guns with short barrels. And as those velocities drop due to short barrels, like even in supersonic, we've got to twist up to maintain stability. So like our 300 Blackout is a 7-inch barrel, our standard Honey Badger barrel, and we twist those at 1 in 5. But that was also a determination made by the construction type of the bullets available. And the same as in 8.6 at 1 in 3. If we go much tighter, if we go to 1 in 2, which we have done and could do, we'll lose the ability to shoot most of the bonded supersonic bullets. They'll start to come apart.
Even the bonded ones?
Yes, yeah, lead core bullets. So in order to keep a healthy balance between the bullets you have available and the maximized rotational energy, it was 1 in 3s where we landed. We'll see what the future brings as ammo companies and bullet designers come up with bullets specifically for this. I think for sure we can make them even faster. And once again, as you can imagine, 1 and 2 is percentage-wise much faster than 1 and 3, and we start to get an even more significant amount of energy.
Now that's wild. Now I'm going to guess a lot of my listeners are going to say, wait a minute, what about overstabilization? Because we always hear about it. People are freaked out that you got a 1 in 7 twist, isn't that going to overstabilize your lighter bullets? Aside from the bullets spinning apart because of the thin jacket and the soft lead core, but even the bonded ones now doing it at those high rates, any other issues that you get lousy accuracy when you start spinning that fast with the lighter bullets?
I think overstabilization is an interesting topic across the board. It's saying that mathematically it's not really possible, and I think what we're really talking about is an exaggeration of imperfections in bullet construction. And if that makes sense, the bullet needs to spin on its rotational axis as perfectly as possible to fly straight. And as we twist it faster and faster, whether that's sub or super, it doesn't matter, any inconsistency in the bullet construction, meaning the center of mass is not exactly on that axis, that bullet's going to start to fly funny. So in general, I think the phenomenon of overstabilization is where we see an accuracy degradation that corresponds to the quality of the bullet. So yes, the answer is you will see a degradation in accuracy as a result of fast twist if your bullets are not constructed properly.
Yeah, so it's not so much just the so-called overstabilization, it's the unstable bullet, basically, because it's not perfectly balanced. Yeah, that's sort of been what I've picked out over the years when I study this stuff. It seems to me like, how can you be overstabilized? You spin a gyroscope or a top faster and faster and faster, it's still spinning perfectly. It's when it goes too slowly that it flops over.
Correct.
Cool. Now, do you see this applying to standard cartridges down the road? And as people get more familiar with faster twists, are we going to start seeing a 270 twisted at 1 and 5? Is it possible? Is it advantageous at all?
We've done some testing in 30 cal down to 1 and 1, and with the intention of trying to see how fast can we go before we, cause a problem. Solid copper bullets at as close to 1,000,000 RPM as we can get. The fastest I've been able to test is about 960,000 RPM.
Wow.
And those bullets, you're looking at a solid copper bullet that will hit gel and just come into little pieces.
The copper will even fly into...
Oh yeah, just gone, just like a shotgun. And we've done that testing. Do I see it in small diameter bullets? Probably not, unless someone very specifically wants to do it. And it would have to be someone like us, because the rotational energy addition is so dependent on mass and diameter.
Oh,
so
right.
It really makes way more sense in large calibers with heavy bullets.
Got it. If someone could get a bullet to withstand it, is there an advantage? It's a 1 in 5 twist 270. What would that do for you if the bullet stood up to it and you still had your accuracy?
I could run the math for you. You would get a significant increase of rotational energy addition at somewhere around in like 1 in 5. You can definitely make a bullet that'll stand up to it. Yes, you would see an increase, and I think we do see that increase in supersonic performance of 8.6 as well, where we're not necessarily doing it for rotational energy addition. We have supersonic velocity, we do have hydrostatic shock and traditional hydrostatic wound channels, but we definitely see a dramatic increase in those wound channels in size because we still have that 17% increase in rotational energy over 338 Federal or 308 that might be comparable in that size.
Now, if you had a bullet that didn't expand, would you still be able to realize the advantage of the rotational energy increase?
I would generally say no, only if that bullet already started out really, really big. You'd have to, talking about a large bullet. We have seen in bullets that don't expand, which, stuff happens when you're learning.
Yeah.
And no, we don't get the advantage. So from a match bullet perspective, what you really want fast twist for is stability of very heavy bullets, not necessarily for energy transfer.
So the energy transfer is sort of a byproduct.
Yes.
Yeah. But it's an applicable one for hunters.
It certainly is, and the truth on target is undeniable. Like it definitely works.
Yeah. Well, that is interesting. Anything that I didn't think to ask you about it that you think we should know? Fast twist rate, subsonic, any of this topic in general?
I think from a general sense, like I think one of the good questions is like, why? Why now? Why didn't we do this in the beginning? And there's nothing new about this math. This is the same stuff bullet designers have known for 100 years. And I think what's really changed is two big things. The technology of barrel making is much advanced over when a lot of the cartridges that we're used to shooting were developed, meaning making 1 and 3 and 1 and 2 twist barrels prior to recent history was not easy to do. Like when we first started pulling buttons in 1 and 3, we're breaking rifling machines because the machinery is not made for it. So that's changed. And then I also think to that bullet quality that I was talking about earlier, all of the bullets made today are just so much better than bullets made before, that we can make bullets for this process, for this idea now that we couldn't make before. So like trying to do this with a soft nose 30-30 bullet, those overstabilization concerns are that much more important. They would be that much more difficult. Where the modern bullets and the modern manufacturing technology we have is what's making it possible.
So what do you think, in your crystal ball, future for deer hunters? Just most of us in America are hunting even up to elk and stuff, but your average hunter for big game, do you think we're going to be seeing more and more of these shorter subsonic cartridges and or the faster twists?
It looks like, I think yes, and it's being driven by the popularity of 300 blackout. Some, as most things, requests from the military side for things to be quiet and short and small. And guns that do those things well are guns that are more fun to hunt with. So I think in practical ranges, cartridges like 8.6 blackout and the stuff that we're going to see in the near future will push us toward hunting that way. Especially as not all of us get to hunt in long range situations ever. And we have to hunt in our own backyards. We have to hunt close to other people. The advantages of being quiet and effective and having small guns all kind of add together. So I hope it becomes popular.
Well, it sounds then like the suppressor is going to be a big part of this whole program.
It is for sure, yes. Shooting subsonic without a suppressor is kind of a waste. I mean, all those bullet performance things are true, but the advantage, that sound advantage that we get by being super, super quiet goes away without the suppressor. So yes, and I mean, we make suppressors, so I highly recommend everyone use one all the time, even in supersonic, but especially in sub.
What sort of decibel reduction do you get from a good muzzle brake?
From a good suppressor?
Or suppressor, I'm sorry.
I think nowadays almost everybody makes a suppressor that does very well in sound reduction, and we're taking those, from your standard supersonic 160, 165 dB measurements down into the 130s, high 130s for supersonic bullets. These subsonics, they don't start out nearly as loud, but in these suppressors can be more low in the low 120s. And it's important to know that the decibel scale is not linear. 160 is many, many times louder than 120. And like dropping the bolt on an AR is about 109.
Yeah, it's that loud.
Yeah, so they'll be so quiet. It's our next big advancement we're going to have to figure out how to make the guns to run quieter so that you don't just hear that.
It's like, crazy. Well, there you go. Kind of the future of centerfire rifles and bullets and just the whole thing. It's still growing and changing. I think back in 1906 they thought, we've got the cat by the whiskers here.
Figured it out.
Figured it all out, and look what's happened. So never say never. Things just keep moving along, and it's pretty exciting to have some brilliant engineers like this who understand the math and the physics and all these different programs to put something together like the 8.6 blackout and this Q-Fix rifle. It's definitely, the future is here, and I think it's moving forward. So get ready, guys. But if you want to be like old Grandpa Ron, just grab your 94 Winchester 30-30 and go have fun. Hey, we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening in. Hunt honest and shoot straight.